Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Time to Football. My name is Hassan Khan, and in this video, we're going to give you our stat projections on every key player on the Philadelphia Eagles. 32 teams, 32 days, one video a day. Starting with the quarterback, Carson Wentz. We believe he's going to get pretty close to the stats that he had in 2017. 44.93 in passing yards, 31 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 187 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. So he's 7th in passing yards, and he ties for 6th in the NFL for passing touchdowns for what we have projected for 2019. Fantasy points per game, 19.4. In his position rank, he's the QB7. Ranks in the top 10, right in between Cam Newton, who's number 6, and right in front of Russell Wilson, who's number 8. We believe that Wentz is going to have a better year than him. I believe a lot of people are forgetting about Wentz just because Nick Foles is the one that played in the Super Bowl and won it, even though Carson Wentz helped lead that team to the Super Bowl after having an MVP-like year. And a lot of people are discrediting Carson Wentz because they believe that Nick Foles is better. You know, to each their own, whatever your opinion is. If you think Foles is better than Wentz, whatever. But Wentz is a very talented player. He's proven it in the past, and we believe that he's going to be a top 10 fantasy football quarterback in 2019. Running backs. This is kind of a mess, and you may want to stay away from all these running backs because we've got Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, and Corey Clement as the top 3 running backs. Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood are also on the roster, but they're on the roster bubble, so there's no guarantee that either one of them are going to make the team. But the top 3 running backs, we're just going to go ahead and cover them in this video. Jordan Howard is the projected starter after being traded from Chicago. 645 yards to 6 touchdowns, 14 receptions, 111 receiving yards. Miles Sanders, who they drafted, 390 yards to 4 touchdowns and 11 receptions and 65 yards. Corey Clement, 103 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, but he's more the receiving back, 21 receptions and 205 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Translating that over to fantasy football, 7.41 fantasy points per game for Howard, Sanders 4.69, Clement 3.71. Position rank, Howard, RB37, Sanders, RB57, Clement, 61. So Jordan Howard is the projected starter, and he has the most potential to outperform these numbers that we have for them just because of the amount of volume that we expect him to get. Owning someone from the Philadelphia Eagles backfield in fantasy football, it's not fun. It's not fun playing musical chairs and guessing who's going to be the main back in that backfield for that particular game. Personally, I would stay away from the whole thing in general unless an injury occurs to maybe 1 or 2 of the running backs in the Philly backfield. Wide receivers, Alshon Jeffrey is going to be the best out of the pack, followed by Nelson Agholor and Deshaun Jackson. For Jeffrey, 75 receptions, 1,005 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns. Agholor, 51 receptions, 657 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Jackson, who just returned to Philly, 43 receptions, 685 yards, he's a deep threat, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Translating that to fantasy football, Jeffrey might be a guy that you want to draft, to keep on your bench, to be a flex player, maybe even your wide receiver too. 10.88 fantasy points per game, Agholor 7.2, and Jackson 6.38. Position rank, wide receiver 23 is Jeffrey, wide receiver 63 is Agholor, and wide receiver 75 is Jackson. Tight ends, the ever so reliable Zach Ertz. A lot of people have Travis Kelce ranked ahead of Zach Ertz, but we punched out the numbers and it ended up being that Zach Ertz topped Kelce in fantasy points in 2019. Let's take a look at those stats. 102 receptions, which is going to lead all tight ends in the NFL and the only tight end to grab more than 100 receptions. 1125 in receiving yards, which is actually second to Travis Kelce. But 10 receiving touchdowns, which is first in the NFL as far as tight ends go. Fantasy football numbers, 13.97 fantasy points per game, and the tight end 1. At a position that is very thin, it wouldn't be that crazy to draft someone like Zach Ertz pretty early. I believe in our draft rankings, in our guide, we have him at number 17 overall, so I wouldn't draft him any higher than that, but if he falls past that, you may want to think about picking up Zach Ertz. Kickers, Jake Elliott is going to do well in a productive Philadelphia offense. 27 out of 32 field goals converted and 46 out of 49 point-after attempts. That ranks 4th in PATs converted out of all kickers. Fantasy football numbers, 8.28 fantasy points per game, and just made the top 10. He's the kicker 10. Jake Elliott is going to have a pretty good year. Defense and special teams. The Eagles' defense, it's kind of questionable. 44 sacks, 10 interceptions, 9 fumble recoveries, and 2 total touchdowns. Fantasy football numbers, 5.88 fantasy points per game, and the 23rd ranked defense. Nothing special as far as the defensive side goes for the Philadelphia Eagles. And those are our stat projections for this team. Do you agree or disagree? Leave a comment down below and let us know your thoughts. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date whenever we come out with another fantasy football video just like this one. Tomorrow, we're going to wrap up with our last division to talk about, the NFC West. And we're going to start off with the San Francisco 49ers. Be sure to hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The username for all three is @TimeToFootball. And if you want this stat projection guide that we base these fantasy football projections off of in these videos, hit us up on PayPal. TimeToFootball@gmail.com is the email, and it only costs $6. If we make any changes to the guide up until the start of the fantasy football season in September, then we'll send you an additional copy at no extra cost. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you tomorrow.